And we are now joined by Sean Plooharty. He is the head of government affairs for Play and Go. Sean, thank you so much for joining us. And boy, you know, I saw it yesterday. I was able to talk with Magnus Olsson yesterday, and that was a fascinating conversation. And right here on the other side of our set, Play and Go is dominating this space. You guys have attracted a huge crowd. You've got the F1 simulators over there, an open bar. One of the highlights of G2E is definitely the Play and Go booth.
Yeah, we were holding it down here in the corner, so I'm glad Sporttrade was able to set up shop nearby, and you're welcome to come over and try the simulator and check out our games.
Well, thank you so much. Tell us a little bit about what the head of government affairs does for a gaming company.
Sure, so obviously Play and Go is an online supplier in the iGaming industry, and right now we're concerned, like many others in the industry, on expanding iGaming legislation throughout the U.S., and that's what I'm trying to do, is help strategize that U.S. strategy on implementing good sound policy that protects the consumer and raises new revenue for states and brings in that new revenue that is lacking in many states right now. So we're focused on those states and trying to make sure we're putting a good people-focused type of legislation together that really protects the consumer, shrinks the black market, and really brings iGaming to the forefront. I think that we're getting very close to seeing that here in the U.S.
Now you have to explain this to me. I mentioned speaking with Mr. Olsson yesterday, and he mentioned, that your company is Sweden-based, and back there, and I had this vision of a big office with a lot of creators and artists and design people, and you're creating slot games for online. So how does that? You're obviously based here in the United States.
Yes.
Where's the connection there with Sweden and the U.S.?
So I'm based in the U.S. We have a U.S. team here, and our goal as a company is to be in every regulated jurisdiction.
Okay.
And that includes every jurisdiction available in the U.S. Now, unfortunately, there's only a few jurisdictions that are up and running currently on the iGaming side, and we are in those jurisdictions or pursuing those that we're not in. We're all but one up and running. So what we're doing now is focusing on those jurisdictions that are not up and running currently, those states. So we only have 6 states that are really fully implemented at this point. And we're focusing on what's the next move, what's it look like, what's the iGaming industry look like in the U.S. As a lawmaker in the state of West Virginia, I can tell you iGaming is nearly 3 to 4 to 1 the revenue of sports betting.
Yeah.
And obviously we're here on Sporttrade.
That's probably true in a casino floor as well.
I'm sure that the numbers speak for themselves on the casino floor, but I think a lot of lawmakers don't understand that. And I think there's an education gap when it comes to approaching lawmakers and regulators when you talk about the iGaming industry. Everybody knows about sports betting. The public was there. Look, Sporttrade does a great job, and you're very popular, and people tune in because sports betting is very popular.
Right.
But the public was there for sports betting. The work now on our end as head of government affairs is how do we get the public on board with iGaming? If you are reaching out to your legislator and saying, I want this done or I support this, like the public did with sports betting, then it becomes easier to move an iGaming bill. And the education gap that we have with the public and with the regulators and also the lawmakers on top of that, it makes it for a complex formula, but that's what we're working on. And it's not just Play and Go, a company that's kind of leading from the front on this issue as a supplier, a leading supplier in the industry, but there's more industry buy-in these days, and I think 2025 and beyond, we'll start looking at more legislation moving in states, and even maybe some states that aren't currently in the threshold that you're thinking of will get the opportunity to move forward.
I would think the pure numbers of the thing, and I'm sure you certainly know this, there are more people that play blackjack and slot machines and craps and everything on the gaming floor versus that population that is involved in sports betting. I'm guessing there's a larger percentage of people that are playing the other games outside of sports, and I wonder why their voice hasn't been heard yet.
Well, there's a large percentage that are now playing in the black market. And that's part of the goal that regulators and lawmakers alike should be coming together and saying, wait a minute, if I want to protect the consumer, every lawmaker in this country has an obligation under their state's constitution to protect the general welfare of the public. And what does that look like in the gaming industry? That looks like a regulated market that we can find if there's a problem gambler, we can get that person help. You can't do that in the black market.
Right.
So an unregulated market is not one where we're actually protecting the consumer. And I think that's something that's important for every lawmaker. That should be a top priority item. We could talk about the revenue numbers all day long, and they're great. I mean, it speaks for itself, and it's more so than sports betting. However, it's the idea that if we shrink the black market, we're actually protecting the consumer. And that's something that every regulator, lawmaker, those decision makers in states should be focusing on.
What is holding the states back, Sean? Because I can understand with sports betting, it's, for so long it was taboo, to bet on a game, to bet on a boxing match or whatever it is. But there's always been acceptance, it seems, and obviously sports betting becoming more and more widely, almost 100% widely accepted nowadays. But slot machines and blackjack, that's almost never had the stigma that sports betting did. So what is holding some of these states back?
Well, it's hard to move legislation. I mean, the legislative process is very cumbersome. And in order to get legislation done, you got to have full agreement going into it. When I was able to get legislation done in West Virginia years ago on iGaming, we worked that bill for a few years.
Okay.
And so what you're seeing now are states that post-COVID were not strapped for cash. They were not seeking more revenue. I think now, a few years removed from COVID, that states are looking to raise new revenue without raising taxes on their constituents. So that's one factor. And I think the education gap is slowly starting to shrink so that policymakers understand what iGaming is. Just as a revenue generator, sure. But again, to the point I was making earlier, this idea that we could protect the consumer and have a regulated market while generating revenue is a successful formula moving forward and a sustainable model moving forward. An unregulated market is not a sustainable model, one where you're not putting people first and protecting the consumer. And so what Play and Go does, unlike some other suppliers out there, is we don't do certain functions like a direct bonus buy, where you have the ability to skip to the bonus game by putting more money in. We find that to be predatory. Now,
yeah, sure.
Other companies would argue that it's not, but we believe that it is. And that's something we do on our own without having the regulators say you need to do this. And as a lawmaker, I can tell you, when not necessarily a company, but an industry says, don't worry, we'll police ourselves, that's usually a red flag. Right? That's usually a red flag. And I'm proud to say that Play and Go, we have been very good at policing ourselves without the necessity of regulators telling us to do it. However, I will say, going forward for a sustainable model, it's important that we do put people first. And as technology evolves, so should our regulations. And one of the issues you see here, if you're a regulator, which I'm proud to say there are a lot of regulators at this conference, which tells you they're doing the work, they're getting educated, they're closing an education gap on their own, and they're putting in the work. But technology evolves so quickly, but yet government does not. Government takes forever to get things done. And, the industry, the tech industry, walking around this floor right now, it's probably evolved in the 72 hours we've been here.
Right.
I mean, it's just nonstop. And government, not so much. So there is this gap where we have to work together, whether you're a supplier, operator, whomever it may be, to make sure that we're always at the front of the game here and doing our best to protect the consumer and make sure we have not only good legislation to start out with the statutes, but beyond that, the regulatory side. So my job is to get in there in the weeds and make sure we get a good byproduct.
Sean Plooharty, the head of government affairs for Play and Go, and I want to ask you, you said at the top of the conversation, what are there, 4 or 5 states that have legal iGaming?
There are 6 fully operational.
Fully operational. How quickly do you see more states coming on, and what is that time frame? Is it like 1 a year, 2 a year? Where are we as far as that timeline with more states coming on board?
I think we all understood 24 would be a tough year. It's an election year, and so all the heavy lifting doesn't really get done in a presidential election year. But yet there are still committees formed or they're taking testimony, getting more data and research done, and that's a sign to me, as a lawmaker who's now working on the U.S. strategy side, that they're doing the right things to put the steps in place to move legislation. Because the idea that you can move a bill in 1 year as soon as you introduce it, that's a heavy lift.
Okay, so you've mentioned a handful of states there. We're going to make you an odds maker here for a minute.
Okay.
What's the under-over on how many years before you get a few of those to come on board?
Well, what's our number? Are we looking at, say, 3.5 as a number?
Okay. All right.
I would say I'll take the over on 3.5 within 3 years.
Okay, all right, very good. That is Sean Plooharty, the head of government affairs for Play and Go, the big popular set right behind us here at Sports Grid. Thank you very much, my friend. Welcome back, everybody. Brady Cannon with you live from the Venetian Expo Center in Las Vegas at the Global Gaming Expo G2E 2024, and lucky enough now to be joined by Alex Kane. He is the CEO and founder of Sporttrade, and this is yet another application that as a sports bettor, sports trader, what have you, you can dive in. That you can dive into as a sports betting enthusiast. Alex, thank you so much for joining our program today. I had a tough time figuring out what you were selling me earlier, but now I think I've got it. It makes all the sense in the world. It's really just like in-game betting, but it kind of takes on a nuance of an exchange.
Yes, that's exactly right. So glad to be here. Thanks, Brady. Basically, Sporttrade, we're an operator. We're live in 4 states, New Jersey, Colorado, Iowa, and Arizona. Next week we'll be launching in Virginia, and it's all about in-game trading. We take the confusing American odds like -110, -120, and we just change them to probability. So I was just showing you the Philadelphia Phillies to win on the money line just now. They're live, they're playing the Mets. They're at 33% win odds. That just means for every $33 you bet, you get back 100. And the exciting thing about it is as those probabilities change, you can buy in and sell out in real time.
And where it's different from an exchange, the sellout, they're selling it back to you, the operator, kind of like cashing out in a traditional setting.
You got it, yep. And that's what we think the future of this industry is, you know, the same game parlay is very popular pregame product. I still think there's so much potential for in-game, particularly bettors particularly people that may not understand American odds and look at -440 and just not know what that is, and instead say, wait, Phillies are at 36% win odds, I'll put $100 down. Phillies hit a home run, they go to 75% chance, and you go, wait, I just bought it at 36, I can sell it at 75, I'm out, and you can cut a profit.
You know, I know for me, I've been here in Las Vegas for 30 years, and I've been sports betting, you know, all the while. So when I see +220 or +440 or something like that, I know what that means generally, but I also like to have it translated where you have it right in front of your eyes, that means, you know, I've got a 95% win probability. That speaks to me.
Yep. Yeah, the cool thing is you can see both. So, for example, the Phillies-Mets pregame was offered about -104 on both sides. That's the other great thing about Sporttrade. The pricing's insane. I mean, what other app can you get -104 on both sides? And we'll actually show you, hey, that's 50.5% win odds on either side. So you have that sort of training wheel, olive branch experience where you both get the American odds experience infused with the live win probability as your bet plays out.
And then is that commonplace at Sporttrade where you have some amazing prices like that, like -104, as opposed to the traditional -110?
That's another huge advantage of our platform. We have several players that bet $10, $20, $50, $100,000 at prices way better than -110. If you come on to Sporttrade on a Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning here, local Vegas time, you're regularly going to see -103, -104 for an NFL spread, and you can bet $15,000, $20,000 at that price. So it's not just the in-game, it's the pre-game and getting amazing prices.
Now I got to give you a lot of kudos. Relatively young guy. How long has this company been around?
We launched in New Jersey in September of 2022.
Okay, so just been around for a couple years now. You're about to go legal in your 5th state. How did this all get off the ground for? I assume you have to have gaming license and all kinds of rules and regulations in all these states where you're now active.
Yeah, so same process that is required of a sports book is required of us. We just have a very differentiated, as you said, application of interacting with sports betting. And it's not just, you know, that in-game experience, it's the pre-game experience as well. We're giving players the opportunity to get great prices, and the best part, we show you the limit available before you place the bet. A lot of professional, avid sports bettors love Sporttrade. They've been driving up from Las Vegas to Arizona, even the 2 weeks we've been live, because they say, wait, why am I paying -110 over here if I can drive 45 minutes and get -104 for $10,000? You've got to be kidding me. So that's what's so exciting about Sporttrade.
And has your success in the states where you are currently active, do you feel that is leading you to being active in more states quickly?
Yes, we're really excited to be launching in Arizona and Virginia in such quick succession. We're only 35 people, so it's kind of a Herculean feat, to be honest, to go through this regulatory process and to get into more states. In 2025, we'll certainly look to expand as well as enhance that customer experience.
Well, obviously this is a great networking platform for you here at G2E. Your goal, it sounds like right now, is to expand into more states. Is there something else that I'm missing that maybe you're here to grow the company other than just getting out there into more jurisdictions?
We're always raising money as a startup, right? We're finding capital backers. We just announced the other day Susquehanna's SIG Sports became a strategic investor and what's called a market maker on our platform, and that's how those great competitive prices get there, is our licensed market makers put those quotes in the market. So we've announced a new strategic partner in Susquehanna. It's a huge part of our vision. You know, if Sporttrade's successful, NFL pregame, hour before game time, you should be able to get minus 102 on either side. And we think that's going to, for a lot of bettors, just change the game forever.
So real quick, before we wrap up here, what's your background? How did you get started in this? What did you study in school? What led you to Sporttrade?
So I studied finance and business law at Drexel University. I was always really interested in financial markets and how over the course of the last 30 years, the cost of a stock trade has gone from $50 to fractions of a penny, thanks to Robinhood, thanks to electronic trading companies. And I wanted to bring that same innovation and thinking and transparency from capital markets to sports betting. And Sporttrade is the application of that. We actually have another really interesting feature called the tape. You can download it on iOS anywhere. You don't even have to be in a state where we're live. And we'll actually show you a ticker, a real-time ticker of every single bet that comes through the app in real time. These are just ideas borrowed from the financial trading world, which is kind of where I got my start from an education perspective.
You mentioned before we came on air that you have an app, obviously.
Yep.
You have a .com, sporttrade.com.
Yep.
Where else, how can people get your product? Where do they find it?
Yeah, so if you're listening out there and saying, hey, what's this whole Sporttrade thing? Type in Sporttrade Whale Tracker on your browser. You're going to go to a Twitter account. It's an automated Twitter account where we post every $3,000 or more bet that's made on Sporttrade in real time. And the great thing about it is NFL Sunday, guys are betting $25,000, $50,000, $100,000, and we give you that transparency, say, hey, this guy just got $50,000 at minus 106 on whatever the bet was, and it creates a lot of engagement. So if you're wondering what Sporttrade's all about, check us out on X.
Alex Kane, the CEO and founder of Sporttrade. Thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you.
Welcome back to G2E, the Global Gaming Expo, here live from the Venetian Expo Center. I'm Brady Cannon for Sports Grid, and we are lucky enough now to be joined by David Vanegmond. He is the founder and CEO of Bettor Capital. And David, thank you first of all for joining us, but I want to explain a little bit. The last two guests we had a guy that has a platform to help bettors. We had a guy who helps you find great content, what you're watching at a sports bar. A little different here. We're talking about a guy that invests in sports betting companies now. Tell us a little bit about this company you founded and what you do, what you're involved with.
Yeah, I'm the founder of Bettor Capital, which is a venture capital investing firm. We specialize in the real money online gaming ecosystem, and we have a thesis around the picks and shovels, the software companies that a FanDuel and a DraftKings will utilize within their app and all the other leading operators, things like payments, compliance, regulatory tech, everything that you don't see that's in the back end of these sports betting or iGaming online casino products. We're investing in companies, technology companies that power that ecosystem.
Isn't that really where the money is? The stuff that's not so exciting, the behind the scenes stuff that everybody has to have in order to make these big flashy products work.
Exactly, and then consumers may be familiar with some of the companies on the user experience side. So let's say you're in a state like Maine or a state like Texas that doesn't have online sports betting, and you log into DraftKings because you're visiting Texas from New Jersey, you can't place a bet or a wager. It's not DraftKings underlying technology that's making that geolocation decision and popping up an error message that says you're in a non-permissible betting state. It's a geolocation technology company, and we're proud to be an investor and one of the emerging geolocation technology companies called XPoint. So that is where a lot of the money is made in the industry, because some of these operators, they're either not profitable or have relatively small EBITDA margins because they have to pay a lot of technology suppliers to help pull their whole product together.
How did you get involved in this? Were you a sports bettor by nature, a sports fan, and then you kind of dug deeper and said, I can invest in some of this behind the scenes stuff?
Yeah, I was a sports fan, avid sports bettor personally, and I was actually in Silicon Valley as a finance person, and I said, what is the Uber for X in sports tech? And I actually was an early executive at FanDuel. I went from finance, Wall Street kind of job, to a job as an executive at FanDuel, kind of pre-sports betting, when it was just a daily fantasy sports company, helped grow that business and really understood the underpinnings of these apps, these betting products, whether it's fantasy or emerging sports betting and iGaming. And I learned that we use a ton of suppliers in the industry to power the software and technology. And so that was an interesting space that, unless you knew the industry, unless you were at this conference every year, you may not have understood the intricacies of the industry, and there weren't a lot of other investors doing it. So I saw an opening and decided to invest around this theme.
Yeah, very cool. So it sounds like you've kind of always had that in your background, the Wall Street, the FanDuel. You've kind of merged the two a little bit here. Obviously, you're here at G2E. Have you been to this convention before?
Yeah, many times. It's a huge gathering of the industry globally, and online over the last 10 years has become a bigger and bigger part of the ecosystem, where you used to see just slot machines and companies servicing the land-based casino industry. Now you see a lot more online gambling companies. We're next to several booths of suppliers, largely for the online portion of the industry, as opposed to just land-based casinos.
Yeah, and even the sports betting presence, I think, has at least doubled, if not tripled, from G2E last year when I was here. A lot more distributors and exhibitors around the floor space here, involving specifically sports betting, where, of course, that has grown, like you mentioned, since the legalization of PASPA. It was probably minimal at this convention, and now becoming a more major part of the floor here at the Venetian Expo Center. I want to ask you what your goals are when you come here. Are you looking for more investment opportunities? What are your goals? What do you try to take away when you spend your week here at G2E in Las Vegas?
Yeah, we have several companies that are exhibiting that we're invested in, so supporting them, helping them with meetings, other things, looking for new companies. What are the new exhibitors or emerging technologies that are here for the first time, or kind of showing themselves off for the first time? We try to find companies that are developing new technology that can be used in the sports betting industry. So a combination of supporting companies we're already invested in here that are exhibiting, as well as trying to find new companies that require more capital to really scale their business. So it's an exciting week for us.
There you have it. If you're an up-and-coming company looking for intel, investment, what have you, check out David Vanegmond, the CEO and founder of Bettor Capital.